Olá a todos e todas. Good afternoon, and welcome to a new interview on editing organized by the Textual Criticism Programme of the University of Lisbon. My name is Elena Lombardo. I am a PhD in textual criticism at the University of Lisbon, and I've been working in the field of digital philology with a special interest in scholarly digital edition. I'm here today with Sandra Boto and Maria Inês Bico. Sandra Boto is an invited assistant researcher at the High Performance Computing Chair of the University of Évora. Between 2020 and 2024, she carried out the project From the Past to the Future, the platform of the Portuguese expression folk balladry at Nova University of Lisbon. Maria Inês Bico is a PhD candidate in textual criticism at the University of Lisbon, focusing on natural language processing and automatic collation. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Elena Spadini. Elena Spadini is an assistant professor in digital humanities at the University of Bern. She studied Romance philology at the University of Rome La Sapienza and digital humanities at the École Nationale de Chartres and Nova University of Lisbon. She's actively involved in the digital humanities community, contributing to the development of software and resources for scholarly digital editing, as well as offering insights into computer-assisted collation and data modeling. Elena, thank you for being with us today. We are all looking forward to chatting with you, and I'll give the floor to Sandra, who is going to begin our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena Lombardo, and I would like to join you and welcoming also Elena Spadini with us today. Elena, we would like to begin by giving you the floor to talk about your academic background. I'd like to start with that. Could you tell us a little bit more about your experience? How did you come to study Romance philology?
So I started my bachelor. So I studied Romance philology both in my bachelor and master's degree, and then I enrolled in a PhD. And in Italy, Romance philology is intended as the study of the text of the Middle Ages in all the different Romance languages. And I'm just saying that because I know that, for example, the Romanistic tradition is a bit different. So there are a lot of traditions, national traditions, and this is interpreted in different ways. So that's what I focused in my studies, and then I started a PhD on the manuscript transmission of a medieval bestseller, the Lancelot en prose, so one of these Arthurian romances. One of the first actually in prose, written in prose and not in verse. So we are really at the beginning of the 13th century, the starting of the prose form, and I had to look at a lot of manuscripts, and I went to Paris for studying manuscripts, for going to the library and studying manuscripts. And then I was using a lot the library of the École de Chartres too, because it's a very they have everything on these topics. And there I saw that they had a master in digital technologies applied to history was the title of the master. And I said, oh, interesting. And I really did not know anything about digital humanities and digital technologies at all, but that sounds really interesting. And then I started to ask around and see how I could combine that with the PhD. So in the end, I paused the PhD and then I did the master. And that's really where digital humanities started to open up. for me. And I also had the chance to work with, so the director of the master at the time was Jean-Baptiste Camps, who is still very active in both in French medieval studies and or in digital humanities. And so that was kind of the perfect combination for me, where to start from. Yes, so it was all new. And then from the master included courses and an internship. And when I was looking for the internship, I saw that there were positions open within the Dixit network, which was a Marie Curie initial training networks. And these are like networks of 10 or more institutions around the topic. And the idea is that is an initial training network. So they form PhD students. And I already was enrolled in a PhD program. So I did that on the side. So my internship was actually the beginning of my work as a Dixit fellow, and that was really inspiring because I had the possibility to. So I worked in the Netherlands at the Huygens Institute within the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences. And that was really a wonderful opportunity to get in contact with a lot of people that were involved in digital scholarly editions at the time, and that's still today. We are talking 2014. I started Dixit, and so within Dixit was led by the University of Cologne, and at the time Franz Fischer and Patrick Sale were there. And then within the network, there was Elena Pierazzo, there was Marjorie Burkhardt, there were so a lot of Dirk van Hulle and many people. And there my project was on software for scholarly editing, and that's where I started to work a bit on software. And in the meanwhile, I finished my normal traditional PhD, which had just a small part on automatic collation, but was mostly a non-digital PhD on this manuscript transmission. But that's really how I came to be interested in digital technologies applied to the humanities and to philology in particular. And then from there, I think I've always been very interested in methodological questions, and so the digital humanities allow me to also move a bit more freely between different periods, different languages, and to tackle more like methodological questions and to use case studies from different from sources of different types. And in the Netherlands, I started to work more on contemporary authors, and then I went to Lausanne also working on a contemporary author. So that's how I kind of shifted towards contemporary literature, but still, I'm open to,
We could say that your move into the digital humanities world was very natural, very smooth, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there were moments in which it was not easy to put all together. For example, I remember that for the PhD, I had some trouble to integrate what I was doing in terms of digital technologies into that work, and also for that to be accepted, not really by my supervisor, who was very supportive, but more in general by the committee, also some of the comments I received. So yes, but also on the other side, it was not easy for the person with whom I was working more on the digital side so I think it was also me that I was not really good at combining that in the beginning, and I think now I have more skills in that sense, but in the beginning it was not always easy and smooth, but I could see that there were combinations possible.
And You just mentioned a few times the word, the expression digital humanities. Could you please help our audience to understand what do you mean with this expression digital humanities? Because I would like you to clarify this concept, because at least in Portugal, it works like a real trend to talk about digital humanities or to do digital humanities. But sometimes I feel that we talk about something that we are not very aware what is it. So if you could help us, it would be fine.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Of course, it's a question that I also ask to myself, and I think it's a question that is, I mean, for me at least, the answer is changing all the time. And yes, of course, it is a trend. Also, now I work in Switzerland, and I have I've worked quite a lot in research support, and I must say that I think it's a real kind of plague. It's really not useful when researchers feel that they have to include some digital components in their projects. And yeah, so sometimes it's not natural to come back to the smooth and natural combination, and then that is a bit of a pity. So digital humanities for me is to address humanities questions, humanities issues, humanities challenges with computing and technology. But it's not just instrumental in the sense that by using computing and technology, we can also advance research and teaching in the humanities. So it's something that brings something new. And when I think of my trajectory in digital humanities, I think one word that is important for me is awareness. And I think that's also because I have been working a bit on tools and software. I'm together with Data Maria Sicani, we created guidelines for reviewing softwares for the journal Ride or Write. So this is a review journal for scholarly digital editions and resources. So is a journal. So I'm just saying that in case anyone in the potential public is interested, this really a journal that hosts only reviews and reviews of editions, reviews of text collections, and reviews of software too. So we introduced that section software. Now there are other people that are continuing that. And so awareness, because when you use a software in digital humanities, I think you should be aware. So in general, I think you should be aware of how that software works. And why is that? Because if you know how it works, then you can change parameters, you can adapt the code, and eventually you can better interpret the results you have. Because if you don't know what happened, you are kind of in front of a black box. And then interpreting the result means like just looking at some visualization or some list or some kind of output format and say, this is the truth. And that's very dangerous, of course. And this is changing in the sense that tools are more and more driven by machine learning. They are more and more opaque, and the processing is more and more complex. So explainable artificial intelligence is one answer to that. But even before that, I think we should have an awareness of what we know about the process. So if we already know that we do not know nothing about the process, because for several reasons, that's already something that we can consider, be aware of, and consider that while we are interpreting the results. I think in the digital editions community, there is this aspect has been stressed quite a lot, and this is sort of also empowering. For example, I think about at the end, I think of the book, Digital Scholarly Editing, Theories, Models, and Methods by Elena Pirazzo from 2015. Towards the end, she does a sort of call to action, saying, I noted down the quote, saying either the scholarly community engages with the digital framework, or the key decisions and models will be established elsewhere and imposed top-down. So the idea is that or we are blindly applying some technologies and some methodologies, or we engage with digital technologies and then we try to create something new, and we are protagonists of this process. And there is a guide on how to use computers published in the 80s, the beginning of the 80s. This guide is published by a science fiction author, Frank Herbert, and the guide is titled "Without Me, You Are Nothing." And I had this in like next to my desk in the office. And when I first read this, I thought it was like addressed to the person from the computer. Without me, you person are nothing. But no, I think it's the contrary. It's like addressed to the computer, saying without me as a person, you computer, you are nothing. So also to the users, of course, in this case, because it's a guide. So, but yeah, so this awareness, I think, is important. And then the other thing that I think is useful to try to define the age is the idea of community of practices that have been used quite a lot, because there is really a variety of research directions and activities that are the moment under this umbrella, and then we will see how this will evolve, how much it will be integrated into traditional disciplines, and how much it will make sense to continue to have this specificity of digital humanities.
And within this broader field of digital humanities, because it's a very broad field, as you mentioned, we could find some or a lot of different clusters. You mentioned, for instance, in your intervention, the scholarly digital edition. Would you clarify this concept, this cluster within the digital humanities field, for because our audience
of course
may need to understand what it is, a scholarly digital edition?
Yes. So again, as always, terminology is important, is tricky, is bound to languages. So in English, there is this term of scholarly digital editions, and this can be translated in different ways. But so it's a bit is broader than critical editions. It includes, for sure, documentary editions, which are closer to kind of enriched diplomatic editions, and genetic editions, and all sorts of editions in which there is an explicit methodology that is used to establish the text, and this is documented, like if there are 10 manuscripts, what the editor did to create one text, or if all 10 manuscripts are transcribed, and if there is just one, how it is transcribed. So like transcription guidelines and all these sorts of documentation that is present in general in a paper scholarly edition as well, plus all the other materials that are useful to for the readers to understand the text, including introduction, notes, commentaries, apparatus, variants, indexes, etc. So it's yes, and then so this would be scholarly edition in general. And then when we're talking about digital scholarly, and so the main goal is to provide a reliable text, an authoritative, reliable text, and together with some accompanying materials to better understand it. And when we are talking about a digital edition, it means that that the editors work within a digital framework. So it does not just take a PDF and put it online, but have something that cannot be, but created something that cannot be printed without a loss of functionality or features in the definition of Sale, of Patrick Sale, and also I think an aspect that Andrews and others stress that the digital might be part of the process and not of the output. For example, we can have a print edition that has been created using automatic collations and other digital means, more data-driven philology. I think it would be a good label. I think Jean-Baptiste Camps also used that in the sense of data as something important in this process, where they come, how they are created, and how they are processed, and eventually also how they are published. But yes. So for me, sorry.
Okay. Now I will give the floor to Maria Inês Bico.
Elena, you mentioned how being involved in the Dixit project was inspiring and a wonderful opportunity, and we would like now to focus on this particular moment and talk about training in the digital humanities. And just to quote for our listeners to understand, Dixit project was an international network of prestigious public and private institutions actively engaged in the creation and publication of scholarly digital editions. Dixit offered a coordinated training and research program for early stage and experienced researchers, covering multidisciplinary skills, technology, theories, and methods of digital scholarly editing. Dixit was funded under the Marie Curie Actions within the European Commission's 7th Framework Programme and ran from September 2013 to August 2017. Elena, you've mentioned a couple of the names that were involved in this project with yourself. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about how the project came to be, how it originated in the first place?
Dixit?
Yes, Dixit.
I think so. I think it originated from this network of people, including, for example, James Cummings, who was at IT Services at Oxford at the time, and Susan Schreibmann in Maynooth, and Georg Vogler in Graz, and Mats Dahlström in Broos, and the others that I already mentioned. And Domenico Fiermonte, and then Fabio Ciotti for Italy too. And these were among the most active people in Europe in the field, as I said at the time, and most of them still today. And so I'm not sure how it originated, but I can say that for all of us was a really great platform to learn a lot, and I I already had some training because of the master, and also I had already started the PhD. So I think my experience was slightly different from many of the others, but not all, because others were also in the same situation. But in terms of materials, there were really a lot of possibilities to learn. I remember one of the first camps was in London about modern medieval manuscripts, and from TI to I don't know, digital paleography and digital codicology, and then there were things more on other kinds of technologies like semantic web technologies, and yeah, a lot about TI in its different possible uses, and yeah, so it was a great opportunity both to learn concrete things and for networking, for knowing other people that were active in the field. So yeah, like nowadays in Bern, I work with Peter Denkeli, for example, who was also involved. Who was working in Cologne, and I knew him from that time, and it often happens to me that I meet people that I met at some point in Dixit, because we were also quite lucky in the sense that we could organize events ourselves. So, for example, with Anna Maria Sicani, we organized a small event together with the IUCD conference in Italy. We organized a training on digital editions at the National Library in Greece. We organized a collation event in Amsterdam together with Ellie Bleker, and Sandra knows about it.
Yeah.
And so these were really nice occasion to say that, yeah, I think it was kind of a privileged setting for a PhD student to have the possibility to explore certain topics, of course, within certain conditions, and yeah, and also a bit sometimes with the challenging of having to communicate with all these traditions and all these different traditions we were coming from. But yeah, it was, I would say, a very successful experiment, and we were also lucky because we were a group of people that bound together nicely. So that was yeah, good.
That would lead me exactly to my next question, which you've already answered. Like, how would you assess the impact of this project, considering that it ended in 2017? How we now today feel the results of the training of the current digital humanists,
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think it was a good occasion, not only for the people within Dixit, but also in general for the larger community to. So in Dixit there was one big meeting every year, one conference every year, apart from the other meetings, one convention we called them, and so these three conventions were the occasions to have a lot of people also from without Dixit, and so that was, I think, beneficial for the community to have these occasions to meet, and also to have some sort of survey, because we published an edited volume with all the contributions from all the conventions. It's called Advances in Indigenous Scholarly Editing. And I think it's sort of, it surveyed a bit the field at the time. So in that sense, I think it was useful. These are short papers sometimes, so, but still. And also, some of the people that work within Dixit are still in the field or in closer fields. Friederike Neuber is leading school director how do you it's called the deputy director of Telota at the Berlin Academy, and I think they are a reference point in terms of research support for editions. They are behind Ediarum and Corresp Search and many other initiatives that are reference points in the field. And they just do a great job with all the editions. And Ellie Bleker is working in Amsterdam, and and um, um, Wout Dylan is professor in Sweden. So I think a lot of people are still active in the field. So I hope it was a good start. I think it was a good starting point for many persons. Someone, Linda, for example, worked in libraries or in other closed fields, but yes, it was, I think. Yeah.
So totally a successful initiative. And you already mentioned some aspects of it, but do you think you can, I'm going to provoke you in some way. What are the characteristics that determine this success? Can you think about it?
I think in general now, probably I was not aware of the details as my position was at the time, but a genuine interest and really willingness to collaborate among the supervisors. And for me, an amazing group of colleagues. Yeah, Anna Maria Sicani, I haven't mentioned, but she works in London, and Roman Blyer is working in Graz. So it was, yeah.
It came from people.
Yes, it's always a bit the people, but maybe it was also the right moment for digital editions. Yes, but I would say, yeah, that the people, yeah, were important.
I think we come back again to the concept of community you mentioned before, right?
Yes, this concept, I'm
Exactly.
thinking a bit about it because it's also something that is very important for research data management. And because I've been working a bit on this in research data management, and there you always have the concept of community. You never have the concept of a field, but really more of communities. And I think whether we should think more in that yeah, in that direction. Also, so concretely, I'm thinking about that for the question of reuse. I'm working together with other colleagues on the question of reuse and reuse of data for editions, and you have some very some aggregators, for example, at the European level, that try to aggregate a lot of data, a lot of research outputs in general, whatever their form is. And this is linked to some institutional needs, and so they make sense. It's like the repository of a university is institutional, it makes sense. But for creating something that is really used by people, I think finding the community is really key. And we were thinking about that in trying to survey their use and reuse of digital editions. Is someone really using the editions that we create? Of course, we know that it's a niche, but still, especially when we're talking about authors that are well known, it could be a broader audience. And so yeah, the question of I think I'm thinking about this term community yeah, I
Yeah,
don't have much
it's
to say
really,
yet, but I was
it's
actually
really
thinking to
concept.
read a bit about this concept of community.
Um, we're a couple years short of making 10 years since the end of Dixit. What would you say are the prospects of organizing a similar initiative in the future, especially considering the advancement of technology and here generative artificial intelligence being an avoidable issue, of course. So.
Yes, I think it would be wonderful. Yes, I think that those kind of collaborations are always useful. And yeah, regarding the question of AI for editions, I think there are quite some experiments on, in general, also about outside the world of editions, about creating structured data through AI. And I think I would really like to see more use of artificial intelligence to actually give access to structured data, not to create them, but to give access to that. For example, I've done something in the direction of semantic editions, so editions using semantic web technologies, and these are really data for machine consumption. These are not kind of the kind of structured data that is easy or pleasant or to read by human. And so to have the possibility to interact with that using natural language, and I think it would be interesting, not just using natural language, but maybe by having supporting to create queries and that sort of things. In general, the idea of accessing the data, because in editions we create a lot of really highly curated and complex interconnected data, and so it's not always easy to then present that complexity, and so maybe generative AI could also have a role there.
Would you say that generative AI is a current trend in training for digital philology, or would you say there are other trends?
No, I wouldn't say that it's a trend yet, but it's more and more integrated, and it's a bit. I'm not sure. I think TI as a quasi community standard is very strong, and it has also a very important role in federating the community. Again, to talk about communities, and so I think that's still the main one of the main point in trainings in this field. But yes, more and more you have other technologies integrated. Yes.
Okay, yeah. We would like now to focus a little bit more on the digital philology landscape of Portugal. Are you familiar with it? We would love to hear what an international researcher knows or thinks about what we're doing over here.
Yeah. So I don't know much, honestly. But what I know is really interesting, and opens up also new directions. And I think I'm looking forward to come to go to Lisbon in July, and for the the International DH conference, and there I think I will discover more. But one of my favorite edition projects in general is the Archivo do Livro do Desassossego. So the Book of Disquiet by Pessoa, it because there the text explodes, like really it open up. So it's an explosion that so the text explodes and is exposed, and so this is a very nice way to represent what I think is central in digital philology, which is the idea that the text is never a given, but is always a problem, and that textual works exist in tangible physical documents, and sometimes in different versions, and so in general even just one version, one document, but they are never flat. They're always there's always a depth, a thickness that I think digital philology explores in different ways, and in the editions then it can be represented. And an edition creates a sort of narrative around the text. So it presents the text, and by doing that, it influences how the text is received, is perceived. And I think that edition really gives a strong message, and at some point also too strong, kind of disturbing. But yeah, I think that is provocative in a good sense. Yeah, and so for example, for the then there are things that I know, but I'm not sure how much. For example, I know about the portal on the Cantigas Galego-Portuguese. I think made at the Facultad de Letras. Yeah.
Nova.
It's Nova.
It's from
So,
Nova, yes.
okay. I'm sorry. Yes, and that for me is a reference point. But I don't know if there are others, honestly. But yeah, so it gives a lot of information. It provides access to the manuscripts, and so it's a very important resource. And we have been talking about with Sandra when we recently met, also about Garrett Online, and this, and also the decisions how to choose the right platforms, also questions of technologies, and we agreed that you have to kind of find a compromise always. And personally, I'm a big fan of the idea that you have to adopt the technologies that are better for your project, but that for which also you have some support, because I mean, in the real world, that's how things work, and it's very dangerous when one wants to do something that for which when one is fixed on some technological solutions that are outside the possibility that one has around her or him. But so returning to Sandra, I think that is a very nice example of also presenting the variants and this text. I like also EVT as a publication platform, so this edition visualization technology platform. And I was looking at the projects of the Digital Humanities Lab at the Nova, directed by Daniel Alves. And well, yes, they go more in the direction of history. Um, uh, and uh, and there was one project on the literary landscape that I found quite inspiring. Also, um, yeah, as a means to explore both the literature and the territory. So yeah, but then there are others that are a bit outside my competences. But again, I think I'm looking forward to the conference in July to know more.
We're looking forward to it too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still talking about different projects. So you mentioned many projects with different objects and different objectives. And you also came to talk a little bit about the difficulties, the challenges of dealing with different objects. So, and you also, in your recent past, you worked as a consultant for digital humanities projects. So I would really like to ask you, what from your experience, what do you think that it was the most challenging issues you ever faced about
Yeah.
digital edition and managing projects and working
Yeah.
in
So
this field?
so project management is a nightmare, and this is something I don't want to talk about because really, I think in the humanities in general, we are not used to manage projects. We are not used to this concept, and
Yeah.
the fact of working by project is still
Yeah.
sometimes perceived as an obligation. That so it's I think complicated, and it is true that a lot of digital humanities projects have this component of managing different people, different processes, with one process depending on the other process, different technologies, different platform infrastructures, and this would require some project management, and that is often lacking, and it might be a problem. I mean, also in my direct experience working in a project in my own, I learned that project management was useful on my let's say having the problem myself. But in general, um, I think what strikes me as one of the most challenging things is to convince people that they are in power, that they can control the mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of humanists with whom I've collaborated feel like that the machine will tell them how to work, or that the digital framework will, dictate how they will work. So so I just repeat them that they can decide what kind of parameters they want to use, parameters in general, but I don't know, what are their transcription guidelines? It's not that I will not tell you which are your transcription guidelines. You decide your transcription guidelines, and then you find the tags in TI that are most suitable to represent what you want to represent, but you decide what you want to represent. And so you decide what's what I don't know if you're interested in linguistic analysis or not, if you want to do collation, and with which type of software, and that of course requires some engagement with the technology, and that sometimes people want to, and sometimes people do not have the time, do not want to, do not take the
So the
time,
awareness
and
you were talking about.
yes, a bit that awareness that for me is like empowering, but for others are like, yeah, I have enough. I don't want to have that. So that was also challenging for me as a consultant to try to understand as soon as possible with whom I was talking to. And in some cases say, okay, you don't want to know nothing. Okay, then I decide. Then the problem as a consultant is that you kind of never have not the recognition, but it seems that you don't have the nobody really gives you the responsibility to do that. So you found yourself in that position. So
Nobody's
sometimes,
land.
yeah, sometimes it's a
Nobody's
bit
land.
nobody's land, yeah.
But this is
But
very
yeah,
interesting
yeah, I think you have to
because
understand if you have in front of you someone who wants to understand and be in control, or someone who just want answers.
mm,
And then for me, a consultant, you have to be able to provide both, because I understand that not everybody wants to learn stuff. But that also I would ask, and a colleague recently had that question asked, like, do you think from a project, do you think I should include this digital humanities part? And the answer from my colleague to this researcher was, well, think about if you really need that part to arrive to your goals, to answer your research questions. Do you really need these digital humanities components or not? So again, you have to decide. You can decide. So take that possibility. Yeah.
but it's interesting because it seems that when we are dealing with digital humanities, we are always in this kind of intermediary place, you know, like and you said I didn't feel it's not that I didn't feel valued, but still
Yeah, it's a bit that, yeah.
say something like that. So it's quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes, I think it's a bit, yeah, it also changes in the different situation, because of course you have when you work in research support, you have clients, let's say, but you also have colleagues, you also have a team, and that is often where you can reflect on all these. But then depends on, yeah, there are a lot of variables, but I think in general it's a very nice job that really gives you the possibility to work with different projects and to experiment, uh, but a bit more of recognition of that from the researchers would be better, in terms to have smoother collaborations in which everyone is okay. And there, I think also project management has a role, so it complicates things.
Okay, Elena. You have already referred to your previous projects on digital editions and also to your consultant work on digital editions. But now I would like you to focus on your brand new research, because we know that you are very interested now on something different on the Born Digital Literary Sources. Could you share with us and with our listeners something about this new project? Is it
Yes,
groundbreaking
yes.
in some way?
Well, I don't know, but for me, I'm really happy. It's a lot of fun for sure. So the idea is to work on the born digital materials in literary archives, and this is also something that actually dates back to Dixit time. My interest in that. I remember at the conference hearing a presentation about a researcher following the creation of a theater piece, and having access to the materials of the author. Actually, the author used the collaborative documents like Google Docs, and then the whole team, the actors, contributed. So it was a collaborative writing process, and some researchers was observing that and then studied that. Yes, and there were new questions, and I thought, oh wow, that's the future. And then I started to read a bit about Born Digital archives, Born Digital literature too, early electronic literature, and so I read Matteo Kirschenbaum and Thorsten Ries. I think are still for me at least reference points, but then there are many others. What I like is that they really combine the textual criticism awareness, the retrocomputing expertise, and so this I think is very fruitful combination. So in particular, the project is. I have a grant from the Swiss National Science Foundation, and the project focuses on Swiss archives and on, even more in particular, on materials in Italian and in French in Swiss archives. At the moment, literary archives and also other archives are collecting more and more floppy disks and hard drives, computers, sometimes USB sticks, CD-ROMs, all sorts of digital materials. Also, just files that are transferred from the others, and in some lucky cases, they are cataloged and accessible. But in most cases, they are not. They are hidden among the paper materials. Like you have papers and then you have one box with some floppy disks. This is the I think most common example. So the project would like to give visibility to enhance a bit the discoverability of these resources. And also to think about how to study them. Does it change anything in our methodology? Does it change anything when we are dealing with a medieval manuscript, with a contemporary author draft, or with some Born Digital draft? Yes, it has three components. The first one, we create a protocol for the description, so archival descriptions, but some sort of enriched archival descriptions. At the moment, just to give you an example to make it a bit more concrete, for example, you go into the archive and you see you have one shelf mark for one hard drive, but in one hard drive you have 4,000 files. And if you're looking for the draft of a certain novel, it will be very hard for you, if you are lucky and you have access to that hard drive. Because some archives are
document.
Yes,
It's a miscellaneous document, right? A floppy
yes, totally. Yes. Exactly. And yeah, so you have to maybe investigate what's inside. And understandably, also some archives are so concerned with potential problems in making these materials available, problems in terms of presence of sensitive data, because they don't have control, they don't know exactly what's inside, and so they are so concerned in giving access to that you just never have access. And it's a bit absurd, but it is like that we can have access to a lot of digitized medieval manuscripts today, also thanks to the IIIF protocol. So it's quite normal to, for example, include in your edition a digital facsimile of a medieval, something from the medieval times, but there is no way you can access a born digital material if you don't physically go into the archive. And this is also true for internet archives. You have to physically go to the archives to access those documents. And I was talking with a linguist, with a friend who is a linguist, and I said, no, no. And she was said, no, I think I didn't understand. What are you saying? But it's like this, and I understand because it's very complicated for the archives to put in place a secure environment where you can consult these documents. So there are a lot of questions, both like administrative, ethics, technological questions involved. Yeah, so the project has one part on the archival descriptions, another part on prototypes of editions, and a third part on the analysis of the creative process when born digital materials are involved. And yeah, so there will be 2 PhD students. I will advertise the position soon. So if you have someone who you think might be interested, please encourage them to apply. And then a postdoc, but only from the 3rd year. So we still have some time. Yes, and it's like prototypes, and we don't aim to describe all the collections in all the Swiss archives, but just to start to define how to do that, because yeah, it's a 5 years project, so we have to limit the scope a bit.
Well, we are in perfect time for another challenging question, because we would really like to hear you about the challenges that reflect on the role of the philologist in this digital era. What do you think they are? So we mentioned one, which is at this point looking to born digital material, but still it's not the only one. Could you please help us to think about it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think they're a bit boring, my challenges, but yes. So on one side, it's more a question about philology per se, digital or not. Yesterday, I was trying to find out to understand more about the digital protection, no, the data protection law in Switzerland, and then there was a frequent asked questions in their website. And the question was, is data protection still relevant in our digital world where everybody shares everything? And the answer was yes, it is more relevant than ever. And I would say with philology is a bit the same for me. So it's does it still make sense? Yes, today more than ever, in the sense that we are confronted with a lot of textual materials all over, and to have that awareness again that you want to understand a bit where this comes from, and how it originated, and why, and always problematize the text, I think is a very useful set of like really tools that you have to live in this world today. But I think it's still challenging to advocate for that. So we have to find also a creative way to make that visible. Because I really think that there is this relevance, and we can find ways to, hopefully we can find ways to make that more visible. And the other challenges is, I'm afraid, on the long-term sustainability of our research outputs. And I'm saying that a bit sadly, but because and it's very challenging because long-term sustainability when we consider issues of long-term sustainability, we are a bit limited, for example, in terms of technologies. There is one, yeah, sorry, so I will come to that later. But so in digital editions, there's always been this these two tendencies, well described by by an article by Elena Pirazzo, prêt-à-porter or haute couture. So do you want to create an edition that is with something that is ready to be used, or do you want to create an edition where everything is made tailor-made for your edition? And in the editions community, there is a lot of there has been always a lot in digital edition community, a lot of excitement about the possibilities of the digital medium. So wow, we can do that and that and that and that and that. But then when it comes to maintain these things on the long term, it's just very difficult. So we have to find compromises in which we limit ourselves sometimes also in terms of technologies to use something that we know that can be more sustainable in the long term. Thinking, for example, there is a trend now towards static website instead of, so without server side processes, without relying on a backend. So these kind of limitations, we have, I think, to embrace them. And on the other side, find ways to still be creative and to explore the potential of the digital means. For example, in my project, I try to, so the plan is to have simple web applications made just of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Plus, I would like to work with designers for creating data visualizations that could represent the complexity of the data that we were talking about before, without the need to create a dynamic website that has to query a database all the time, and that is more difficult to maintain on the long term. So this is a challenge, and so yes, I think in both cases, both in advocating about philology and the important relevance of digital philology today, and to find this compromise, we have to be a bit creative to be realistic of what the situation is, and to be a bit creative in terms of trying to find new solutions. So yes, it's important. Yes.
Okay. We are sadly approaching the end of our interview, but there is something I would like to ask you before we reach our final and quick questions. And that is that prior to taking any step regarding the setup of a digital edition or some text analysis, a digital philologist must build his own workflow, right? Mm-hmm. And this workflow will reflect the philologist needs and the results we want to get. And consequently, one must deal with this permanent adaptation from a software to another software, skipping from a language to another language, before one reaches the result of our research, which could be a scholarly edition available on some web page, right? And this means that a lot of time-consuming work must be done, and regardless of a great list of tools we have nowadays at our disposal to solve this, many of them are also free use and open source, and that's quite nice. But in your opinion, what is the missing tool regarding digital philology which could smooth this issue I've just mentioned?
I think the not really the missing tool, but the missing piece is again sometimes people. I think that's really the most important thing, because digital editions are in most cases, unless you're doing a prototype, are too complicated to be created alone. If you're doing a prototype, or if you're doing a PhD dissertation, that it absolutely makes sense. And then you have definitely to use, I mean, unless you have you are a programmer and a philologist and you have 10 years then it probably makes sense to go for something that is ready to use in terms of tools. But in all the other cases, it's thinking ideally it would be nice to have a combination of different skills. And I've worked in Lausanne. I was responsible for the digital components of the edition of Gustave Roux, of the complete works of Gustave Roux. And so it's not really an edition, but it's a platform that gives access to the manuscript, to the genetic relationships between to the archives. But there, for example, as in a lot of occasions, and I was still lucky, it was me to do everything on the digital part. And of course, at a certain point, I really asked to the director, like, I need to talk to someone who does web design. And then I had a couple of meetings with this person who helped me to define, for example, the navigation of the website. And I think it would have been very hard for me to arrive to that alone, because I already tried to learn, and then I learned something about how to define, I don't know, web page, but the navigation, for example, like the sitemaps. I don't know if you remember, in older sites, the websites, there was this sitemaps where you have all the pages and the links between them. So that kind of thing, when you are developing a website, is really important, but very difficult, I found. So without the other persons with whom to collaborate, you have to be aware that you can do certain things only. And so the missing tools sometimes is more collaboration, more and of course this is very challenging also for universities, and that's why I think it's really good to have a pool of people that are stable, and so that in this sense, where I was working at RISE at the University of Basel, and also in Bern, there is something similar. The data science lab is a good choice in the sense of having a pool of persons that are there and then can work in different projects and stay there, because a lot of competencies are developed in a project and then the persons go away and then you start again over and over. So the missing piece are persons, and also stable persons in institutions, and
Money.
of course that would yes, and but
Money,
also
time, and
decisions,
people.
also kind of strategy, and that it would also make that kind of position more attractive if you have permanent positions in that type of job with a permanent position. That will make it also more attractive, because for software developers, for example, it's not very interesting to work in university, because apparently, I don't know, but that's what everyone says me, is that they can earn much more when they go to the private industry. So
I hope our policymakers hear you.
Yeah, it's a general problem everywhere, I think, and but yes, in some places more than others. But it's a battle that we all have to fight, I think.
Unfortunately, we've come to an the end of our session. Had we more time, we would still be talking and would continue
In
talking because
Lisbon,
this
in
is
Lisbon, the next
in
July.
Lisbon we
Yes,
hopefully
yes,
will
yes,
meet
yes, yes.
we'll meet again. So to wrap up, Elena, do you have any final messages for those considering to enter the field or the community of digital humanities, digital philology, and for those who have just begun their journey?
I think it's a quite welcoming community, so just welcome and yeah, enjoy, have fun.
This is
Yes,
fundamental. This is very nice.
yes.
Have fun. Yeah.
Fun, especially just have
Yeah.
fun.
That's
And
the point.
and another final question. Any reading recommendations or projects you would like to invite our listeners to explore?
There is a project that I would like to read more about. They produce documentation, so I read something, but not extensively, and so it's a recommendation for myself and for others, which is the Endings project. Project is a Canadian project. It's called exactly the Endings. So many endings project is at endings.uvic.ca for Canada, and is about building sustainable digital humanities projects. The subtitle is How Do and How Should DH Projects Conclude? So yeah, that's my next reading. So I share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll explore it as well. And once again, we would like to thank you for your time. Hopefully, we will all meet in Lisbon in July, and
Okay.
we'll continue our
Yes. Thanks a
conversation there.
lot. Thanks a lot. It's really nice talking. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to our listeners too.